Today you're going to hear from the Homicide Squad about a very exhaustive, lengthy investigation into a number of very serious violent crimes that have occurred between June 1st and November 24th of 2010. These crimes include 4 first-degree murders that occurred in a period of 75 days in that time period. I'm personally very proud, as I know the Chief is, of the accomplishments of the investigative team and the efforts that have gone into this investigation to bring these crimes to resolution. But as I said at the beginning, I'm also very confident that the resolution of this investigation will assist in preventing many more violent crimes in the future in these neighborhoods and entitle the people to live the lives as they expect they're able to. So I'm going to step aside at this point and let you hear from the people who have actually done the hard work. I'm pleased now to introduce to you Detective Sergeant Hank Edzinga, and he'll brief you on the investigation. And when he's complete, as I said earlier, Chief Blair will have some comments for you. And Detective Sergeant Edzinga will take questions after Chief Blair has spoken.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Deputy McGuire and Chief Blair, for being here today and for your support during this investigation. My name is Hank Edzinga. I'm a Detective Sergeant with the Toronto Police Homicide Squad. With me today is my partner, Detective Justin Vanderheiden, and I'm going to brief you on Project Summit. In February of 2011, investigators from the Toronto Police Service Homicide Squad linked a series of shootings and murders which had taken place in the city of Toronto between June of 2010 and November of 2010. As a result of these linkages, a task force was struck to further investigate the occurrences. This task force drew on officers from Toronto police divisions across the city. The task force became known as Project Summit. Today, Wednesday, October 19th, 2011, 27-year-old Mark Garfield Moore was arrested and charged with 54 firearms-related offenses, including 4 counts of first-degree murder. He will be appearing in court today at 1911 Eglinton Avenue East. I will break down the substantive charges chronologically. The first shooting occurred on June 1st, 2010 at 24 Poplar Road in Toronto. I would describe it as a drive-by shooting. Mr. Moore is charged with mischief, endangering life, discharge firearm, endanger life, and weapons dangerous in relation to this occurrence. The second occurrence occurred on June 17th, 2010 at 7 Denison Road East in Toronto. Again, I would categorize it as a drive-by shooting, and Mr. Moore faces the same charges for that occurrence. The third occurrence occurred on July 8th, 2010 at 50 Tuxedo Court in Toronto. It's alleged Mr. Moore fired a gunshot through the door of an apartment at that address. And again, he's facing the same 3 charges in relation to that shooting. The fourth occurrence occurred on July 29th, 2010. A firearm was discharged in a schoolyard at 80 Slan Avenue in Toronto. And Mr. Moore is now charged with the offense of weapons dangerous in relation to that shooting. On August 5th, 2010, in the rear laneway of 90 Greenbrae Circuit, a 28-year-old male was shot multiple times, and as a result, Mark Moore is charged with attempted murder while using a firearm. On August the 9th, 2010, there was an armed robbery of a jewelry store at 660 Eglinton Avenue East, where the clerk at the jewelry store was shot in the arm and the leg. Mr. Moore is now charged with multiple charges in relation to this occurrence, including robbery while armed with a firearm, conspiracy to commit an indictable offense, aggravated assault, disguised with intent, discharge firearm, endanger life, use firearm to commit an indictable offense, and point firearm. Previously charged in relation to this jewelry store robbery were Kevin Williams, 31 years old, and Sarah Patsula, Patsula, 23 years old. And we worked very closely with the Toronto Police Service Hold-Up Squad to bring that investigation to a successful conclusion. The first murder occurred on September 10th, 2010 in the laneway at the rear of 30 Greenbrae Circuit in Toronto. The victim was 27-year-old Jamil Spence. Mr. Moore is charged with first-degree murder in relation to this murder. And Jamil's mother and wife are here with us today, Beverly Francis and Siobhan Clark. The second murder is a double murder, which occurred on September 29th, 2010, in a laneway at 1798 Weston Road. 18-year-old Courtney Facey and 23-year-old Mike James were killed in this laneway, and Mr. Moore is now charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in relation to those murders. Courtney's mother, Cindy Facey, is here with us today, as well as his father, Courtney Facey, as is Mike James's mother, Joanna Simmons. The 9th occurrence occurred on October the 9th, 2010, at 30 High Castle Road in Toronto. A firearm was discharged again in a schoolyard, and Mr. Moore is now charged with the same 3 charges as the other occurrences: mischief, endangering life, discharge, firearm, endanger life, and weapons dangerous. Our 10th occurrence is another drive-by shooting. It occurred on October 20th, 2010 at 3304 Danforth Avenue in the City of Toronto. No one was injured in that occurrence, and Mr. Moore stands charged with the same 3 charges in relation to that occurrence. The last occurrence is the murder of 45-year-old Carl Cole, which occurred on November 24th, 2010 at the rear of 65 Greenbrae Circuit. And Mr. Moore is now charged with first-degree murder in relation to that. Carl Cole's wife is here with us today, Dorothy Cole, as well as his twin sister, Carol Cole, and his children, Jerome, Shamika, and Shamar Cole. The remainder of the 54 charges are ancillary to the substantive charges I've just read out. In addition to those charges, the following investigations were also involved in Project Summit. There was a firearms trafficking investigation. Project Summit targeted a gun trafficking ring which supplied Mr. Moore with firearms and ammunition. In conjunction with the Guns and Gangs Task Force and the Firearms Enforcement Unit of the Toronto Police Service, 3 parties have also been arrested as a result, and 40 firearms trafficking charges have been laid. I will not be releasing the names of the 3 parties who were charged. Project Summit also investigated a narcotics trafficking ring operating in the area of Greenbrae Circuit. In conjunction with the Toronto Drug Squad, 3 persons have also been arrested and charged with trafficking controlled substances, and I will not be releasing the names of these 3 parties. We are currently working to determine further charges which are going to be laid against parties for aiding or abetting Mr. Moore, or obstructing the investigation or the course of justice. Persons knowingly in possession of any firearms used in these murders will be charged with being accessories after the fact to murder. Although the family is here today, they've advised me they do not want to answer any questions today. So I'm going to turn the podium over to Chief Blair, and after Chief Blair speaks, I will take questions from the media.
Thank you, Hank. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here this morning. I am certain you're all quite anxious to ask questions of the investigative team in this investigation, so I'll try to keep my remarks brief. I think it's tremendously important this morning, as we announce the results of Project Summit, to remember the victims of these terrible crimes and the families of these victims. Last fall, these crimes occurred in the neighborhoods and communities of Toronto. We lost 4 men, 4 of our citizens, and their families have experienced an unimaginable loss. And I want to extend my very sincere condolences to each and every one of the family members for their loss. I also know that these crimes can have a tremendous impact on the communities in which they occur. They cause people to become fearful, people to be afraid to go out and use public spaces. And these crimes demand a response. As Deputy Chief McGuire has indicated, we are absolutely committed to keeping our communities safe. We have committed ourselves in the Toronto Police Service, working with all of our community partners in emergency services and in community safety, to reduce victimization and to reduce violence in our city. And when it occurs, it demands a response. And I want to express my gratitude and my pride in the Homicide Squad, in the detective sergeant and detective and their team who led this, in the unit commander, Staff Inspector Mark Saunders, and to all of the men and women who have worked so hard in this investigation. The Toronto Police Service is absolutely committed and resolute in its determination to bring the perpetrators of such violence to justice. We are equally determined in our resolve to work with all of our communities to reduce violence and victimization everywhere it occurs. The results of this investigation are important. It also demonstrates the facts that you've heard this morning and that will be revealed in the prosecution of this offender, the incredible negative impact that a single individual can have on our communities, the amount of violence that it is alleged that this individual has perpetrated in our city, the victims who have lost their lives as a result of a single person's activity, really reveal to us the importance of ensuring that we leave no stone unturned, that we follow every investigative lead, and we dedicate our resources to ensuring that these individuals who commit such violence are brought to justice and they are prevented from wreaking further havoc and harm in our communities. And so on behalf of the Toronto Police Service, I want to again express my very sincere condolences to those who have lost a loved one, a person they cared about, to a community who has lost that individual, and the community who has suffered such fear and trauma as a result of these crimes. And as well, I want to acknowledge the incredibly important work of our Homicide Squad in helping to bring justice. And we know that justice will not bring closure or return a loved one to a family, or to do all of the work necessary to restore the confidence of a community in its safety. But this is an important investigation and an important result. Thank you very much.
I think the families of the victims described him best this morning. If these allegations are proven in court, he's an evil man.
Detective Sergeant, was there any rhyme or reason to who the accused was shooting at, and any commonality between the victims?
There's no commonality between the victims. We've released before Jameel Spence, we believe, was a victim of mistaken identity. Courtney Facey and Mike James, there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to why they were killed. Carl Cole, there was a dispute between him, allegedly, and Mr. Moore.
Did this all begin with a gun trafficking ring, or can you speak to how this all began, this investigation?
The investigation began, I became involved in the investigation in November of 2010. I was assigned to the murder investigation of Carl Cole. And by February of 2011, we had identified Mr. Moore as a person of interest in that murder investigation. We then linked him to the other three murders in March of 2011, and he became a suspect in these four murders. With the size of the investigation ahead of us, as we linked him to more and more shootings through the summer of 2010, we established a task force in April of 2011. And
was he part of a gang? Mr. Moore was part of a gang, being known?
he proclaims himself to be a gangster. Is there any specific street gang which he is a member of? No.
Essentially random, some of these victims, random victims in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or how do we describe these victims anyway?
Well, like I said, Jameel Spence was he was targeted, but he was targeted in a case of mistaken identity. He was not the intended victim. The Courtney Facey and Mike James, I don't like to say they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, because they are out on Weston Road enjoying the night, picking up some food, and Mr. Moore allegedly, for unknown reasons, pulled up to them in his vehicle and shot and killed them. And none of these, neither Jameel Spence, Courtney Facey, or Michael James, had any contact whatsoever with the police in the past. They weren't gangbangers, they weren't involved in criminal activity, and they're innocent victims.
I can't recall a citizen of the city being charged with 4 murders before this. In your experience, have you ever dealt with someone who's allegedly killed 4 people before?
No.
Detective Sergeant, did he in fact fire the gun at the jewelry store where Pasula and Yoas were arrested? The bullet that hit the clerk?
That is the allegation that we are making, yes.
Was Moore known to police before, or was he before the courts when all this started?
He is known to the police. I can't get into the details of his criminal record, and he's been before the courts before. He was arrested in March of this year for another shooting, and he's been in custody ever since.
What shooting was that?
That was a shooting at Excess Nightclub at 261 Richmond Street on March the 11th of 2011.
How would you describe what might have motivated this accused? I mean, was it about protecting his turf, or because allegedly he's proclaimed himself a gangster? How do you link all these shootings?
Well, there's a great deal of evidence that links all the shootings. There's a great deal of forensic evidence. There's a great deal of eyewitness evidence, and to rationalize why he did some of the things he did, I'm at a loss. I really am. So we'll bring some evidence out in court, and there's no doubt in my mind that he committed these murders, and I don't know if anyone except Mr. Moore will ever be able to rationalize some of these occurrences.
Just a violent, dangerous man then, who was out for
Absolutely.
pleasure, or what? I mean,
Absolutely.
Can you describe the circumstances of his arrest?
He's been in custody, as I said, since March 2011, so he was brought to court at 1911 Eglinton this morning on a judge's order, and two of the officers assigned to the task force placed him under arrest at the courthouse this morning.
So he was let out after the arrest in March, the nightclub shooting?
No, he's been in custody ever since.
Are you, do you expect more arrests? I know you mentioned that the investigation would be continuing in terms of anyone who might have assisted him or...
I do expect more arrests. I do have evidence to lay further charges against people, and you can imagine there is a mountain of evidence that we're going through, and once we have that sorted out, those people will be arrested and charged.
What was his beef with Carl Coleman?
I'm not going to get into the specifics of the beef, but there was a dispute between the two of them.
Some of these happened in Rexdale, some happened in Scarborough. Where was he centered?
During the time period, he lived in Scarborough. I wouldn't call it Rexdale. Lawrence and Weston is where the double murder happened.
Was he born in Toronto?
Yes, he was.
Just a few weeks ago, we saw some of these appeals to members of the public, even in the Jamil Spence case. Was there something in the last 3 weeks that essentially broke this wide open for you?
This has been going nonstop since April. We did do some appeals in the last month in relation to these investigations, and the evidence has been coming in fast and furious. We did get a lot of good results from those releases that we put out, and new evidence came in even this week as we were preparing to arrest him.
Did you ever find the blue Honda?
We do. We have seized Mr. Moore's Honda Accord, and we have seized his BMW X5.
How do you explain this to these families, this arrest?
I don't think there is any way to explain it to them. Basically what I've told you folks. We brought them in this morning at 9 o'clock, and I sat them down and I explained to them, we're charging this man for allegedly killing your 4 kids and husband. And it's very difficult for the families today, and that's why they don't want to answer any questions today.
How much safer are the streets of Toronto now that this guy's behind bars?
If you look at the number of shootings that this guy committed, on a weekly basis in Scarborough, to have him behind bars, I think is saving lives and saving a lot of injuries to people.
For somebody this level, how much cooperation did you get from public tips on Crime Stoppers? We always say use Crime Stoppers. How much of that, did we get from this case, or mostly witnesses that came forward?
We had a lot of community cooperation in this case. There seems to be you can gain notoriety as a criminal on the streets of Toronto for killing people. But if you kill people who aren't involved in the game, you're not going to get protected. So we had a lot of witnesses come forward and a lot of help from people and Crime Stoppers as well.
What about the 2 other investigations? We're talking about firearm trafficking, drug trafficking. Are these part of the Project Summit as well? What's the link?
The link, as I explained, is we identified some people that Mr. Moore was trafficking firearms with and getting ammunition from. And so we investigated those people as well during the project, and some of them we arrested and charged with multiple firearms charges.
But we cannot say it's a gang.
I wouldn't say it's a gang, no.
We'll be taking 2
Answering
more
to
questions.
Mr. Moore? Were there people answering to him? He said he's a gangster, but no specific gang. Was he leading others, would you say, having minions on the streets?
Well, I think you'll realize that during the armed robbery investigation, he did have 2 other people with him. Yeah, 60 Eglinton, Kevin Williams and Sarah Patzela. What the rank structure is between them, and he does have other friends too that he commits criminal offenses with. There's still an outstanding shooter for the Carl Cole murder. There were 2 shooters in that one. So.
Can you tell us what part of Toronto this guy lived?
In 2010, he lived in Scarborough.
The 3 people arrested, are they the same or are they different people? Are we talking about 6 arrested men or?
6 different people.
6 different
Yes.
Detective, are you looking at other cases as well? Are you continuing to look at other unsolved shootings, murders? Yeah, how is this ongoing?
Absolutely.